Okay, we have the Technical Steering Committee meeting for 11th of June 2025. We don't have quorum currently, as we were discussing, so there's only 4 voting members currently, so we won't be able to make any decisions currently unless more join later, but with some of the agenda, we may be able to progress anyway, just without making any decisions. So we do have apologies from Ben and Neil. A couple of things from the ISC meeting on Monday. The first was a target to try to agree committee roles by the end of this month. We'll get we'll have a review of that later. There'll be an ISC representative joining the board meeting on the 30th of June. Now, I will need to check the minutes. I think that might be on a rolling basis. I think. I actually can't remember now. Matt is not here, but the off-chain contract, everybody that had a successful budget submission is in the process with Intersect's procurement team to pull together a written contract initially, and that's been progressing really well. There's most of them are now in a place that we can actually look to. The first draft is through, is my understanding. I believe that the only thing that's changed slightly is that although we're pushing forward as Intersect with all of the written contracts initially, and there will be the smart contracts will have to be, for practical reasons, rolled out in phases. So I think there's an initial batch that will be trialed using the smart contract system, and then the intention is over. And I don't have the timescale to hand, so apologies. But over the course of the remainder of this year, all contracts will be eventually migrated onto the smart contract system, but that'll be piloted initially. There's a big discussion around Treasury withdrawals. You might have seen the poll on the Ecclesia that has given a strong indication for a larger number of Treasury withdrawals. I'm not very close to that conversation, to be honest, so can't speak to it to a huge degree, but I know that there are practicality concerns over doing the 39, and so I know that that's a topic of the it's a big topic of conversation amongst the exec team with the board on how we can execute on that. If Matt joins later, he might be able to talk a bit more to that. Oh, hi, Lorenzo. It's not on the agenda here, but I will just mention that, as we discussed, I am starting to roll off my as secretary for the Technical Steering Committee, and Lorenzo will eventually be maybe not full-time as secretary. It might be someone in Lorenzo's team who takes this role on, but he's I'm starting the handover process with him. We don't have anyone for KES agents. Neither Adam nor Duncan are here, so we'll move past that. Don't have Kevin to talk on intra-era hard forks. So I think it might be.
There's one action item there on number 7. There's a poll going on at the moment to arrange a meeting outside of the normal schedule to help determine what comes under core in the proposals that were directed towards either the TSC or OSC. So it's a joint meeting. You click on that doodle link and submit your availability. Hopefully
I would
nobody
share
on
that.
YouTube watching this does that.
Yeah, yeah. I've just shared that in the messages for anyone that's not done that yet. It's in that case maybe worth discussing a bit further than remit with those that are on the call for a little bit. Again, we can't make any decisions, but it's maybe a good opportunity for discussion.
Yeah,
If
I've been kind of hesitant around the remit of the TSC, given the history of like overstepping in the eyes of. But you've made this lovely spreadsheet to give us sort of guidance on some of the things to consider as part of the remit and discussion.
I think part of the issue that we've had, Johnny, and I understand, is that we've run into trouble because this hasn't been documented fully and properly, and so there's been a misalignment of expectations. Whether that's within the TSC, within Intersect, within with the community as well. So that's where I'm very keen that even if it is a bit of a live document and we keep adding to it over maybe the course of the next 12 months as we go through, at least we have a documented position in here. And if it's wrong, we can, if we take it to the board and at the end of June and they disagree with it, well, we can have that disagreement up front rather than, months down the line, is my view on it anyway. Does anyone feel that there should be disagree with that, or think that there should be anything another approach that we should be taking on this? Speaking quite frankly, I just feel that we've become a little bit paralyzed because of the remit question. When things have come to this group, the first question has been, is this something that we should be looking at, have the power to make a decision on? Should we be spending time on it?
I think the term is once bitten, twice shy.
Yeah, I understand that. So Johnny, you weren't here last week, so let me just walk through the principle with this. What I'm trying to do here is to say I've divided up or thought about the main areas that the TSC has operated in over the course of the last year.
Yeah, and that first one's roadmap creation, where there was an open survey, and product committee was a part of that as well, right?
Yeah,
And 50 odd people responded to the survey, and then that was used to generate the roadmap that then went up on chain for final ratification or amendment, but it didn't get amendment during that process. Yeah. So you're saying the TSC would still be involved in that roadmap creation process in some way?
So some of these things, they're not going to be owned by many of these things are not going to be owned or by the TSC, but actually that doesn't mean that the TSC won't have some significant involvement in it. Roadmaps may be more of a difficult one. So I mean, just to go on to something like hard fork, which we were talking about last week.
Mm-hmm.
So that I think that's one of the more well understood ones. And so we've said, right, hard fork, what do we mean by coordination in that? What are some of the, and breaking down the activities involved in that?
You got to make sure that everybody knows there's one coming, what feature sets need to be enabled, why a hard fork's needed, make sure that people are updating their software across the board, all the tooling's ready for it, things like that.
Yeah. I mean, that's quite a granular level of detail there. Generally what we've got here is a bit higher level, but the principle's right, is to say, well, when it comes to deciding when to actually commence the hard fork, well, is that the TSC's decision alone once it's had a recommendation from the hard fork working group, or does it take that decision jointly? So so as a starting position, we've said, well, that is the TSC's decision, that when it's when all the metrics that have been set, appear to be indicating that it's a good time to go, then that's their decision to make. The creating the risk analysis, that's executed by the TSC, but is delegated to the hard fork working group. But informing the SPOs and DREPs and conducting temperature checks with the community, that is owned by Intersect rather than the TSC, for example. So just trying to formalize what we have here. Does that make sense as a process?
You've got some hands there.
I've got plenty. Yeah. Sorry, who was first? Lorenzo.
Hey guys. Just on the question from Jonathan about the roadmap. So speaking from the product committee side, actually seemed like a good segment to mention this. So we product committee is now working on the long-term vision. Of course, it's not going to be a decision of the product committee. We still need to we're getting feedback, and then we're going to create a draft. Then we'll need to get more feedback, and then we'll submit it on chain. So product committee is acting as a recommendation body. One thing that we'll need TSC and also GMC support is in this process is the in relation to the value that Cardano can provide. So the idea is that it's not going to be just product committee proposing this 2030 vision, but because it's a broader vision, it's like an ecosystem vision basically. We need expertise, technical expertise, marketing expertise, and product expertise. So we'll try to book first a session, perhaps with just the chairs for these three committees, and then we'll book time with the whole committee. So this is just to say, I think there is a pretty important role for TSC in recommending first a vision, and then once you got a vision, in theory, from that we need to derive a roadmap, and of course there will be a technical roadmap. So I think there is a stronger place there. But again, it's a recommendation. That's what we see so far. I don't know if that covers some context, at least from roadmap or visions.
I was more sort of summarizing what happened previously. So previously there was that survey, and that survey was the beginning of the process of working out the prioritization and then working out the roadmap. I don't know if we're going to go back to surveys of the wider community in order to determine it, or if it's just within committees.
That process, Johnny, I mean, to be honest, it was one born out of necessity at the time when we needed to get things, to get community input and start that process. I think we've got something far more robust going forward.
Well, I would say Ecclesia could be used to help determine people's opinions on roadmap prioritization now, rather than just a Google Doc survey. And then that gives more stake weight reportability into it as well.
Yep.
But Marcus has his hand up.
Hi,
yep,
Marcus.
I raised my hand shortly before Duncan already clarified that. So there was the question of if the TSC could carry and care about the hard fork process, and I just wanted to point out that the hard fork working group is more under operational oversight and execution from Intersect. So it is more like, at least my understanding was, this is an operative process, not so much as any committee that is steering or recommending anything. And that for me then brings up the question if the TSC, but Duncan, you already clarified it. From my understanding, it is still part of operational Intersect deliverables. So what we could do is we could look into if we as TSC could step or cover a little bit more the defining part of it. So what is part of a hard fork? When does it happen? And how do we feel on the overall readiness? So more the decision making is already too much of a word. Given our recent past experiences, we don't decide anything. We only recommend, and only if our recommendations fit well somewhere else, then they are considered. So that's where we ended up, and that's where I assume have a lot of trouble now to define or remit or even have an idea what we could do. Because what I see currently is that actual decision making based on the hard facts, this means subcontracting, budgets, sub-assignments, planning of what is part of a package that may becomes a node release or a hard fork content. It's all done somewhere else, not here in our committee. And so why should we believe that we can do something meaningful on this, other than appearing as the public nice committee that decides things, but actually they are decided somewhere else. So I don't see this currently happening without a proper definition and confirmation of a remit. I mean, look back, we had clear ideas, but we was even clarified and set back by our own board. So the Intersect board has declared twice that it is not our remit, not our things that we are in our power. And as a second clarification, it was clarified that Intersect itself cannot handle what the technical steering committee wanted to do. So first of all, we should clarify if what we may want to do can be handled operatively from Intersect. For example, a hard fork execution, but honestly also just a hard fork execution alone is by far not enough to justify weekly meetings here with all of these people here. So there needs to be some clear inputs and some clear clarifications before we can have a better idea what we can do or are allowed to do here.
Okay, so there are a lot of points in there, Marcus, that let me try and pick the ones I remember out there. So on the question of being allowed to do things, what this exercise is for the TSC to put forward a stated position of where do we think that we provide value. That we have a number of we have great technical expertise in this committee. Where do we slot in to the process to add value? When we put, as we build this out, this is our recommendation. This is our almost trying to get a ratification and alignment. So when we say about getting sort of permission or agreement from the board, I'm seeing this as a way to facilitate that conversation. To go to say hard forks, we believe that we are responsible for conducting the meetings as we did last time. Yes, it's delegated to the hard fork working group. As any committee, that there's only so many people in one committee and so much time you can offer. We utilize working groups, but that fundamentally falls under our remit, except for, as you've said, a lot of the operational things that actually, yes, that's Intersect's role. So on you go, Johnny. So,
I mean, that's more of an existential and like how much relevance does the TSC have without authority? And Kevin said in the chat, like the TSC needs to have some decision making authority, and if not, we'll have an incredibly centralized process where things are being made and decided elsewhere, and we're just essentially going, yep. But rather than get into that cynical discussion, one thing I would practically like to add to the idea of the hard fork process is the technical steering committee could at least contribute or ensure that there's proper documentation as to what new things are going to happen after the hard fork event, so that there isn't anything accidentally buried in documentation further away about what the effects of the next hard fork will be. So that's something we could try and oversee or ensure is happening at the very least.
Can I put can I catch that comment then, Johnny, and say that you've got a view there of where the TSC could really be helpful to the community.
Because we have these recorded meetings, if there was a discussion about what's going to happen in the next hard fork, people could be referred to that recording. There could even be a formal presentation made in a separate recording, just very brief about what's coming in the hard fork. That kind of thing has been happening recently. There's been more specific like videos made about node features as new nodes have come up. But if it was for the hard fork specifically, that would be a nice thing to make sure is in people's view publicly. And then in the future, if anybody goes, well, we weren't told this, and this was that, you can just go, well, it was published. Here it is. There's the video. You could have looked at it.
I captured that sufficiently. Communication on content of hard fork.
Yeah, the effect it's going to have on the chain or on like feature set or yeah. Typically, that's been done by blog posts by IOG as well. Like when hard forks are coming, they give a list of new features.
Yep.
But I'm talking more granular and technical as well.
Okay. So this is the process that I'm trying to go through to help get us out of the place that we're in, where we have, you know, lack of clarity and uncertainty. I have called for feedback from all members.
Yeah, I'll make sure to
Yes.
fill that in. Sorry for being remiss.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I'm just the train's leaving the station, to be honest. So I think I'm keen to give everyone the chance, that as much chance as possible to input into this. I think yes, there's a few things that we can do here. I think we're now nearly at quorum, so we can either go back to 6. We do have quorum. We can either go back to the agenda and cover that off, and I can send everyone away with that request again. What I've been doing is, where there has been, you know, something shared, trying to aggregate the inputs and, you know, and trying to populate this. I still need I think I need a little bit more time, to be honest. But it would be helpful to get more input from everyone in the TSC. Otherwise, I'm going to just try and make something that I think is pragmatic, to be honest. So, do we want to spend more time on this in this call, or should we maybe go back to the agenda? Hi, Kevin, by the way.
Kevin's in an airport, so he might not be able to talk.
Yeah, but
Yeah, hi everyone. It's going to be a bit noisy.
Hello. Yes, about a week, you say? We got about a week to get feedback in on the remit of the TSC.
That's what I'm estimating, because my understanding is there's a board meeting at the end of June. And this is going to be one of the items which is presented to the board. So
Okay.
the ISC will send a representative or representatives to that meeting, but I don't know at this point who they will be.
Well, what else is on the agenda, Duncan? Because there's a link available on Slack and in Discord, I think, but definitely in Slack to give feedback on that remit. So that's to be done. But what else do we got?
So what I propose, Johnny, is if we could all take an action to provide input to that. Duncan, if you don't mind collating, so you've started to collate feedback already, and what we need to do is we need to get something coherent together by next week, I think, so we can pass that on. I don't think we've got any more time than that, unfortunately.
That's okay. And then we briefly went through the agenda already in your absence, Kevin. Anything you want to pick up?
Well, there's nobody here for Kes Agent, but item agenda 4, the intra-era hard fork, Kevin.
Yeah, I was going to talk about that. So this is relevant to the discussion we've just been having about Remit. Now, there's been some discussion at the release meeting and other places about the next hard fork. There's a desire to fix a bug which has cropped up. So the team wants to fix a bug. However, the feedback from Philip Tesaro is that actually the bug only affects something like less than 500 ADA worth of value, and the people who've been affected are not completely desperate to retrieve those funds. So if they can get the funds back at some point, that would be great. But there's no major push to do this. So what I would say is it's better to put together a more measured hard fork, not to rush this one, just for this one item. And to also include, for example, Bluetooth improvements, rather than having 2 hard forks, one which is based just bug fixing, another one which is then going to be Bluetooth improvements, and then the timescale for the hard fork would be that the development would be completed in about 3 months' time, from what Ziyang was saying. So that's from the Bluetooth team. So we'd be looking then to convene a hard fork working group around the September time frame, and looking for possible Intra-era hard fork before the So that's what I would propose to feedback. That there is no, we don't see the need for urgency to fix this bug, and that it's better to be more measured with the development to allow time to include the Bluetooth enhancements the team wants to do as part of that Intra-era hard fork. So they would like a decision from us.
Yeah, well, if they like a decision, I would vote for delaying and batching rather than doing a very small hard fork myself, just for the sake of around 500 or less ADA. If that can be bundled and people don't mind waiting a few months, that's fine with me. That's my vote.
We do a proper vote on this. Oh, sorry. Does anyone want any bit more discussion on it before we go straight to a vote?
I was just about to ask who would be asking us here, but it seems release team means the release team on the Haskell node implementation, right?
Yes, it's the node development team who are asking about this.
Which is a great demonstration that they are acknowledging the remit of the TSC in order to kind of decide and set timescales, right, on what makes sense in terms of hard fork coordination.
Yes, they don't have, the developer team don't have all context, Sebastian. So they need more context. To be fair, I'm not sure that anybody in IOG, well, most of IOG has the context either. I've obtained the context by asking around.
Yep.
But there needs to be some decision on this the team can point to, and then can plan appropriately.
So a formal vote then.
Yeah, what I would propose to Johnny is to allow those who aren't in the meeting to also vote. So
yes, I agree.
Allow other people to participate. So Duncan, do you want to? So Johnny, you're proposing the vote. I will second the motion.
Excellent. Then that would go on the Slack channel, I guess, with a proper title, and then people giving their responses.
Right. We can take a vote. We can take a vote by show of hands here, or we'll just do it completely in the Slack channel. We want to do an initial vote here.
We can do as an indication if you like. But the formal one will go out. Do you want to do a thumbs up if you're in thumbs up if in principle you're happy to do a delayed single hard fork, or thumbs down if you'd rather do two? That's unanimous.
In which direction, just for the video?
Oh, sorry, that's you. That's unanimous for having a single hard fork within the year that includes the Plutus improvements.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, we can't guarantee it definitely happens within the year, Duncan. All we can do is to aim to put the action on chain, the hard fork action on chain, assuming that the community is ready. Enter that process kicked off once this development is completed.
Is there anything more on this you want to cover, Kevin?
Yeah, I was just going to say there's an implication of doing this, which is that the next full hard fork Dijkstra then can't happen too quickly after this intra-era hard fork. So we would need to leave some gap of probably at least 3 months before the Dijkstra hard fork happens. But based on the state of development, as I understand it, that's entirely plausible. We're not expecting Dijkstra to be ready in less than about a year.
Great. We've touched on the TSC remit. I can cover a bit of news about the maintenance contract, and but I'm afraid not a lot. So the original maintenance agreement that was drawn up in the earlier part of this year between IOG and Intersect, that never reached full agreement and wasn't signed. My understanding is that wasn't part of IOG's proposal submission as part of the budget process, and there are no further discussions, as far as I'm aware, on that contract, and instead the focus is on what was included within IOG's budget proposal. As I understand, there's going to be 5 statements of work that incorporate IOG's budget scope of work. We will see. We're expecting to be able to see those on Friday. They're being drafted by IOG currently, so there's an expectation that maintenance will sort of be encapsulated within those statements of work. I'm not clear on how that's going to look, but it's expected that it's going to be a completely new approach. I'm sorry I can't give any details at the moment. As I say, we just genuinely haven't had any visibility on that. We're expecting to be able to see that on Friday, but potentially next week we can give a bit of an update on what that looks like. But the old version of the contract, I've been informed that is not going to be progressed any further. Hi, Kevin.
Yeah, so it's worth saying, Duncan, that in the budget proposal, IOG is making some commitments to maintenance. So they will need to be carried out in the contract, Duncan.
Mm.
And that's going to be important because, as we've identified, there could be gaps in the maintenance.
This is what you mean, right, Kevin? In the budget proposal, which is now, I think, up for info action and the overall intersect roundup.
There was
is a
another
position.
there was another ongoing contract being negotiated for ongoing maintenance during the time frame of up until and including the budgetary decision making. So that's what's being dropped by the sound of it in favor of possibly integrating into that other one or some other. It's not revealed by Duncan here. He says he can't reveal it yet.
Oh, I can't reveal it because I've genuinely not seen it. So whether there's going to be, I've been told that there's going to be 5 statements of work that cover everything within the IOG proposal. Whether that is broken down, how that is broken down, I do not know. There could be one statement of work that's purely focused on maintenance. It could be that maintenance is woven into all 5 SOWs, but they're more by more by team. It could be done a number of ways, and I genuinely am not sure how IOG are approaching that.
Yeah, well, what's important, said Duncan, is to make sure that the work that was proposed is actually covered in the contract. So anything proposed will need to be included in the contract, or else we have to find some other way to cover it.
Are there any questions on that? Should we move on to the joint meeting?
Questions, not questions, more of a comment. In the last 10 or 15 minutes, I learned a lot of new things. Like there is already a plan for a hard fork after the Intra-era hard fork, and then that there is a potential new or not renewed or differently renewed contract. I'm not sure if it is a good thing that we learn this here in this public calls, and that the remit of the TSC basically is that the elected members learn from such already taken decisions in such public calls. Ideally, we get information ahead, we form an opinion, and then we are the committee who should form an opinion, and then is it a recommendation or a decision on these things? Right now, this whole thing here feels completely upside down to me.
So the information about the hard fork that comes out of the release meeting, Marcus, and so obviously every time we cut a hard fork, having done that, what we then need to do is we start preparing the next hard fork, putting in place the appropriate ledger era, etc. So that's the first step that happens, and that's being done at this point in time. So what we know is what the ledger era will be called internally. Internally will be called Dijkstra by the ledger team. What we don't know at this point in time is what the technical content of that hard fork will be. That's completely open. So this is something which would need some open discussion.
Yeah. So don't get me wrong on this, but it really sounds to me more like there is a ledger team, then there is a hard fork team, there is a release team, and some other team, and all of them do some meetings and decisions. And then we here in the public call are more like the representatives of the community who sooner or later care about. But then what actually should we do with this, other than recording a session like this one here?
Please make your way to gate 10, as your flight is now closing.
So maybe your question is really how can we, or how is the TSC informed upon these developments, right? Even in this case where in this case, the Cardano node implementation, for example, even acknowledges the kind of advisory or decision-making nature of the TSC on these things. Question is, how can we get informed and stay up to date in these matters? It seems to me that Kevin just has been the liaison here, just taking in these news, bringing them onto the agenda here. And And now maybe what you're asking now, Marcus, is whether there is kind of another way to stay up to date on top of this or earlier in the process. Is this characterizing it?
I think you're actually
yes,
pretty...
earlier in the process. For me, it is like, so if we only hear about, then okay, write a blog post about the taken decisions and I can read it. If I only hear about, but actually we cannot, so what should we do? Should we say, okay, or no, I disagree, I don't want this hard fork this way, so this is not realistic. So I really wonder what do we do here?
So I'm giving you some contextual information, Marcus. The information we're getting is percolating up, as said, from the release meeting, which is organised under the TSC. So this is information from the most recent release meeting. And from the TSC perspective, this is there's some questions that we just discussed and taken a vote on about the upcoming hard fork, but B, there's some information that will help guide us to prepare for the next major hard fork. So what we would possibly want to do is to start to initiate discussions about what should be the content for the guides to hard fork. The question is when to start doing that. Do we start to have those discussions now? Do we start to involve community in the discussions? Obviously, the ledge team needs to be involved in that, and possibly other teams. Or is it something where we feel we can step back for the time being, and then because it's not going to happen until middle of next year, I'd expect, whether it's more appropriate to be involved at a later date. So there is a question for TSC. How does it want to be involved? What does it want to facilitate?
Well, okay, I try to understand this, maybe with some additional conversation after this call, but for me, I mean, whatever the other ledger teams, and I don't say they are doing it wrong or it is not their remit. I just wonder what benefit or what can we do, or what do we serve here? Do we add something meaningful to this whole thing, because it looks all to me like already decided and agreed on. So like, well, there is no benefit that we do anything here.
No, not the only thing that's decided on, Marcus, is what the next ledger area will be called. There's some ideas about what should be included in the content, but they're definitely not finalized. And in terms of the formal structure, this is coming from the ledger working group, so the technical working group, which comes under the TSC. So there may be a question about making sure the information percolates up from that group to this group, so we're aware of it. That absolutely there is quite an involvement here.
Okay.
Yes, we are, Nicholas.
Yeah, so maybe concretely we can add a line which is really about escalating issues from release teams or whatever into the TSC. That is maybe we can comment on the previous spreadsheet, something like that.
Yes, and it's possibly a line Sebastian is saying about the organisation of the technical working groups as well. So they've been set up and they're essentially running in a more or less autonomous way. But it sets, from what Mark's saying, it sounds as if it might be nice to have a bit more input into those working groups.
Anything else on the agenda to be covered?
So I had an item about organising a meeting with the joint meeting with ISC.
Yeah.
I've got doodle responses from several people. I will collate those and propose a slot. I'd only had one OSC member respond, and I'm not sure if that person can make time for them. So
Further final board and council activating passenger still employed by NMDK, the contract RK 9451 to Belfast. As there are still
Oh, there's your flight. Oh, no, that'll be my flight. Sorry, that's Belfast.
yeah, sorry, I can't mute my microphone because I've lost the window.
Sorry.
Final call be back for the departure number 21.
That's a flight to Belfast. You know, come and see me. We'll have dinner, sure, Kevin.
Yeah, sounds good, Johnny.
Anyway, yeah, so you were saying there's a doodle link there for people. I said that at the start of the meeting when you weren't here. People can put in their availability for the OSC TSC joint meeting to discuss what is and isn't core. Yeah.
So I'll aim to close that off today, Johnny, and pick a date that the majority can make. But we'll obviously need some OSC representation. Don't know where the question is here in the meeting. I can't see.
I don't think he is, but I can give him a nudge, Kevin.
Thank you. Yeah, well, obviously there's no point in having a joint meeting if we can't get any OSC representation.
Yeah. Christian and Tex were both here at the beginning of the meeting. They're now not.
Well, if there's nothing else, we can maybe wrap this call up. Is there any other business anyone wants to raise?
No, the proposal thing's quite interesting. Like that vote came out with 39 individual proposals. We talked about that very briefly. It's going to be difficult because they don't have 3.9 million aid to put them all out in one in individually in one batch. Which brings up the conversation about a potential future amendment to the process to allow for multiple options, but that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, I think the feedback that what I was getting from that, Johnny, was that the G-reps want to be involved in the process. Obviously, from Intersec's perspective, it would be better to have fewer, larger proposals going in, but the G-reps, the majority of the G-reps clearly want to have signing authority over the individual treasury withdrawals. So they want that level of granularity. Whether they are realizing that the way the process is being set up, there will be a budget proposal and then a smart contract will be activated. Whether they're expecting to be involved at later stages, I'm not sure. But that seems to be the feedback. So presumably, what they're anticipating is that they might want to support some parts of the budget process, but not others, or that some parts might be more popular than other parts. And obviously, from Intersec's perspective, Intersec will need to put in the core budget proposal, because without that, they can't execute on any of the contracts that they're administering.
Yeah, it's quite a position to be in. Like hand tied, can't get out the money. Oh well, we'll see what happens. I guess the DRES make the decisions, hopefully. So we'll see what happens in the end. Anyway, that was the only other business I wanted to briefly touch on, is acknowledge that that poll is complete and that it wasn't over 50%, but it was a majority of those who participated at close to 50%. I think it was 40 something, 49.
Yeah, 40, 46, 47, I think.
I have a tweet here that had it reported as well. Yes, 47.4% of stake. But that is really representative of the total active stake of about 30 to 31% of the total active stake that would have been on chain. Just as a footnote to that process, because not everybody participated.
Well, as I said, there's not been a decision yet, but I believe by next week there will be, so we can follow up on this.
Okay.
Cool. Do we want to have a follow-up session? Is that valuable?
Let's switch over to the closed session, and we can always terminate it quickly. It's nothing we want to come.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.